How do you explain to someone who wasn't there that the best tank driver I ever knew, the man who saved 11 lives including mine, couldn't read a map? That he navigated by church steeples and the smell of diesel and some kind of animal instinct the rest of us didn't have? Dietrich had been a farmer, corn and wheat, never even seen a tank before basic training. The veteran crews called him plow boy and tractor jockey, made jokes about how he'd probably try to plant crops in the German countryside. But on November 18, 1944, outside a village whose name I still can't pronounce, when 3 Panzers had us bracketed in a kill box, that tactical doctrine said was absolutely inescapable. Dietrich looked at me with those calm gray eyes and said, "Sir, I know a way out." And I had 3 seconds to decide whether to trust a farm boy or die by the book. I gave the order. "Do it." Hastings grabbed my shoulder, actually grabbed it, yelling that I was going to get us killed, but Dietrich was already moving, throwing us into a hard left turn that physics said shouldn't be possible in a 30-ton Sherman. The Panzer's round went exactly where we'd been sitting, punching through air, and I watched the tracer arc past our starboard side so close I could feel the heat through the armor plate. We were moving perpendicular to the kill zone now, tracks tearing up frozen earth, Henderson hanging onto the turret basket for dear life, and Dietrich was taking us toward, not away from, a stone wall that looked maybe 3 feet thick. "Brace!" That's all he said, and we hit that wall at 18 miles per hour. The impact threw me against the turret ring hard enough to crack a rib. Stone exploded around us. Dust filled the fighting compartment. And then we were through into someone's courtyard, and the Panzers had lost line of sight. I'm 97 years old now. That was 80 years ago this November. I've had 3 children, 9 grandchildren, 16 great-grandchildren. I taught high school mathematics for 34 years. I've forgotten most of my life. Can't remember my grandson's wife's name half the time. Can't tell you what I had for breakfast this morning. But I remember every single second of those 4 minutes with Dietrich. And I still don't know how he knew. How did a kid who'd spent 21 years driving tractors in straight lines across Nebraska flatland understand tank combat better than men who'd been fighting in North Africa? What did he see that we couldn't? Because what happened in that village, what Dietrich did with a Sherman that shouldn't have survived first contact, it wasn't just luck. It was something else. Something I've spent 80 years trying to understand. Geilenkirchen Sector, November 1944. Operation Clipper, cracking the Siegfried Line before winter. I was Lieutenant James Morrison, Tank Commander, C Company, 2nd Armored Division. M4A1 Sherman, undergunned, under-armored, but we had numbers. Germans had expertise. If we didn't take this sector, the offensive would stall, thousands of infantrymen counting on armor support. History talks about Aracourt, the Bulge, Falaise. Nobody remembers Geilenkirchen, nobody remembers Prummen, and nobody remembers that a Nebraska farm boy proved every tactical manual wrong. When Dietrich joined our crew in September, he'd been in a tank for 6 weeks. The Panthers we were about to face? Their crews had been fighting since Kursk. We'd been in that village since 4:30 in the morning, supporting infantry clearing operations. Easy job, they said. Germans were falling back, they said. I'd lost count of how many times they had been catastrophically wrong. Dietrich had been twitchy all morning, kept adjusting his periscope, checking sightlines, running his hands over the transmission controls like he was reassuring a nervous horse. The rest of the crew thought he was just green. I was starting to wonder if he knew something we didn't. "Sir," he'd said around 6 in the morning, "something's wrong with this street." "What do you mean, wrong?" "The cobblestones. See how they're all torn up on the left side but perfect on the right? Something heavy came through here recently. Go in that direction." He pointed east, back toward German lines. Henderson laughed from the gunner's position. "Farm boy, you're reading cobblestones now." But I looked, and Dietrich was right. The wear pattern was fresh, deep gouges, track width maybe 6 inches wider than a Sherman. "Could be a tiger," I said quietly, "or a panther." Hastings added from the loader's station, tobacco juice punctuating his concern. "Intelligence said they pulled all armor back to Lineage." When's the last time intelligence was right? Dietrich asked it so simply, so matter-of-factly, that nobody could argue. The first panzer revealed itself at 8:47, not by moving, by not moving. Our infantry squad had advanced past a collapsed barn, actually advanced past it, boots on the ground beyond the structure, when Dietrich said, "Stop. Don't move. Nobody move." I looked through my periscope, saw nothing but ruins and morning mist. "Dietrich, what—" "The barn shadow is wrong. The sun's been up for 2 hours. That shadow shouldn't be that dark unless something's blocking the light from behind the boards." 10 seconds of silence. My heart was doing things hearts aren't supposed to do. Then Corporal Davies from the infantry squad whispered over the radio, voice shaking, "Jesus Christ, there's a panther in there. It's been here the whole time. We walked right past it." That's when the 2nd and 3rd Panzers opened up from the tree line 400 yards north, not at us, at the street behind us, cutting off our retreat. The street we'd driven down 30 minutes ago, thinking we were advancing into cleared territory. We were in a kill box. Textbook German armor ambush. The panther in the barn traversed its turret. Slow, deliberate. That long 75mm gun swung toward our position with mechanical precision. "Reverse! Now!" I was screaming into the intercom before my brain caught up to my mouth. "No," Dietrich said, dead calm, voice like Sunday dinner. "If we reverse, they've got us. The 2 in the trees have our rear arc zeroed. We go backward, we die in 3 seconds. Then what the hell do we? We go through the barn, through the panther, ram it from the side where its armor's weakest, knock it off position. Then we have maybe 6 seconds before the other 2 adjust fire." Hastings stared at me from the loader's position, eyes wide. "Lieutenant, he's insane. That's a 45-ton Panther. We're 30 tons. We'll crumple like a tin can." "Do it," I said, and Dietrich smiled, actually smiled, like I'd just given him permission to do something he'd been waiting his whole life to try. We hit that barn at 19 miles per hour. Full ramming speed for a Sherman. The wood structure exploded around us, boards and dust and 100-year-old timber turning into shrapnel, and then we impacted the Panther's left side with a metallic shriek that I felt in my fillings. The German tank rocked, actually rocked on its suspension, this massive 45-ton beast pushed sideways by the sheer audacity of what we were doing. Our ball hit their running gear right between the 3rd and 4th road wheels, and something snapped. I heard it even over the engine roar, a sound like a steel cable breaking under tension. The Panther's left track went slack, draping off the wheels like a dead snake. "Gunner, traverse left, tree line." Henderson was good. Turret swung, found target, fired at the northern Panzer. The round sparked off their glasses. Didn't penetrate, didn't matter, made them duck, bought us seconds. back us out. Dietrich already had us moving, hard turn. Suddenly, we were behind a stone wall hull down. The crippled panther couldn't traverse far enough. The two in the trees had lost line of sight. 3 seconds of silence, just breathing and engine noise. Did that farm boy just ram a panther? Henderson was staring at Dietrich's back. They're regrouping, Hastings said. Then they'll come for us. Dietrich, I said, keeping my voice level, you got us out of the kill box. Now we need to get back to friendly lines. 600 yards south. Think you can get us there without using the main roads? Through the buildings? Through whatever you have to go through. I watched him study the village through his periscope, left to right, then back again. His lips were moving slightly like he was counting something I couldn't see, reading some language the rest of us were blind to. There, he finally said. See that church steeple? It's leaning about 4 degrees northwest. That means the ground underneath is softer on that side, probably drainage from the creek we crossed this morning. If the ground's soft enough for a church to settle, it's soft enough to bog a panther. They won't risk that approach. We go east of the church, they can't follow without getting stuck. Hastings and I looked at each other. How do you possibly know that? I asked. Same thing happens with grain silos back home. Foundation settles unevenly. You know not to drive the harvester on that side, or you'll be digging out for a week. He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Like everyone should know that church steeples and grain silos followed the same rules. Sir, Henderson was looking through his sight, voice tight. Movement. Eastern tree line. The panther from the barn. They're pushing it back into position with a recovery vehicle. I looked. Sure enough, a German tank recovery vehicle was shoving the disabled panther, trying to get its gun back into the fight, even with a busted track. They really want us dead, I muttered. Can't blame them, Hastings said, working a fresh plug of tobacco into his cheek. We just rammed one of their premium tanks with an American tin can and lived to tell about it. That's embarrassing for them. Contact! Contact! 9 o'clock! Henderson was traversing before he finished the sentence. A 4th Panzer, where the hell had a 4th one come from, emerged from a side street 90 yards away. Point-blank range for tank combat. Mutual assured destruction distance. Their gun was already traversing toward us. Our gun was still swinging. Smoke! I was clawing for the smoke grenades, popping them, throwing them, anything to break line of sight. Dietrich didn't wait for orders. Threw us into a hard reverse, then a pivot turn that violated every mechanical limitation I thought the Sherman had. The Panzer fired. The round went through the space we'd occupied 1 second earlier, punching through the stone wall and detonating somewhere in the building behind us. Brick dust rained down on our hull. They're hurting us, I realized, the tactical picture suddenly clear. 4 tanks. They're not trying to kill us quick. They're pushing us into a specific position. Where? Dietrich asked. I looked at our map, at the village layout, at the only piece of open ground in this entire sector. The market square, I said. They're pushing us into the market square, and once we're there, we'll have no cover and 4 firing angles to deal with. The market square was a death sentence, roughly 80 yards across, cobblestoned, surrounded by 3-story buildings with perfect overwatch positions. Every tank commander instinct I had screamed to avoid it. Sir, Dietrich said quietly, I think we should go there. You want to drive into the kill zone voluntarily? They expect us to avoid it. They've got the approaches covered, but if we go straight into the square, We control when and where we enter. They have to adjust, and while they're adjusting, we're exposed in the middle of an open square with 4 panzers shooting at us. For about 15 seconds, yes, sir. Hastings was staring at Dietrich like he'd sprouted a second head. Farm boy, that's the worst tactical decision I've ever heard. Probably, Dietrich agreed, calm as anything. But I'm not thinking like a tank commander. I'm thinking like prey. Prey? Back home, we had coyotes. They'd hunt the chickens at night. Pack tactics. They'd herd the birds into the open, then converge from multiple angles. Worked every time. He paused. Unless you were the one chicken smart enough to run straight at the lead coyote. They never expected that. Broke their whole formation. I looked at Henderson. Henderson looked at Hastings. Hastings spit tobacco juice onto the turret floor and said, "Well, we're already dead if we keep running. Might as well die doing something stupid." He grinned when he said it. Actually grinned. "Henderson, load armor piercing. We're doing this fast and violent." We hit the square at full speed. The first panzer rounded the corner seconds after we entered. Their commander expected us behind the fountain. We weren't. We were halfway across, moving perpendicular to their firing solution. "Target! 3 o'clock! On the move!" Henderson fired. The round crossed 80 yards and punched through the Panzer IV's turret ring. Catastrophic kill. Smoke poured from the commander's hatch. "Reload!" Northern approach. Panther, tracking us. "Driver, hard right." Dietrich cranked us into a turn. The Panther fired. Round creased our right fender, glowing orange hot. "We can't keep this up. We need speed. Henderson, target the building at 10 o'clock. High explosive. Fire." The HE round hit the 3-story building's support wall. The structure groaned, shifted, and upper floors began to collapse. Slowly, gracefully, directly into the street where the 3rd Panzer was advancing. The German commander saw it coming, tried to reverse. Too late. 300 tons of brick buried his turret completely, 2 down. But the Panther was reloaded, and the crippled one from the barn had rolled back into position. "We're out of miracles." "One more," Dietrich said, "but you're really not going to like it." He pointed at the church. "We are not ramming a church." "Not ramming? Positioning? That soft ground? If we park hull down behind the churchyard wall, the panzers can't approach without getting stuck. They'll have to engage from range, where our stabilizer gives us the advantage." "What reinforcements?" He tapped his headset. "Radio's been working. I've been broadcasting our position for 3 minutes. Figure we've got 90 seconds before C Company gets here." While we were fighting, you were calling for backup?" Seemed important. The Panther fired, hit the fountain, turning it to rubble. "Get us to that church, Henderson. Keep their heads down." We made it, parked exactly where Dietrich said. The 2 remaining panzers tried to advance. Both immediately started sinking into the soft ground, exactly as he'd predicted. And then I heard the most beautiful sound. 9 Sherman tanks from C Company rolling into the square behind us. The German panzers withdrew. Smart crews. They knew the odds had shifted. We sat there for 3 minutes, engine running, nobody saying anything. Just breathing. Hastings opened his hatch, stood up, looked at the collapsed building, the burning Panzer IV, the fountain rubble, the bogged-down panzers. "Farm boy," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology for every joke, for doubting you, for almost getting us killed by trusting the manual instead of you." Dietrich climbed out, face covered in sweat and dust. "For what?" Captain Reynolds arrived, looked at the scene, shook his head. "Morrison, what the hell happened?" Dietrich happened, sir. He just outfought 4 veteran Panzer crews using tactics I didn't know existed. Reynolds looked at our damaged Sherman, then at Dietrich. Son, where'd you learn to drive like that? Tractors, sir. And chickens? Chickens. Yes, sir. Coyotes and chickens. Same principle. We didn't celebrate. You don't cheer after combat. You just exist. Grateful for existing. Henderson checked equipment. Hastings cleaned guns. I wrote the after-action report in my head, knowing nobody would believe half of it. Dietrich sat on the church steps, drinking from his canteen, looking at the settling foundation like an old friend. You really knew about the soft ground? 60-40, I knew enough. The rest was hope. 60-40 odds, and you bet 5 lives on it? He looked at me with those calm gray eyes. Better than the 0-100 we had going the other way. We stayed in Prummern 2 more days. Found the German command post, maps showing the entire ambush plan. We were bait. Dietrich's ramming attack disrupted their sequence. The report went up through division. Someone noticed. They pulled him for instructor duty. He lasted 3 days. Can't teach instinct. Either you see it or you don't. The crew stayed together through the Bulge, the Rhine, to the Elbe. Henderson took shrapnel in March. Survived, lost 2 fingers. Hastings made it home. Started a tobacco farm. Reynolds made major. Dietrich didn't talk about it much. Not haunted, just didn't see what was remarkable. I grew up reading land, he said once. That's farming. The tank was just a big tractor. But I saw the cost. The jokes stopped. Every farm boy after Prummern carried an edge, because he'd proven all the training, all the doctrine could be wrong. He made it home in 46, back to Nebraska, bought a farm, married a girl from first grade, 4 children. I visited in 1987, 12 hours to North Platte. He was 64, still working, still reading ground. We sat on his porch, drank lemonade, watched sunset. You know what I think about, he said. The 11 men who went home because of those chickens. If I'd never outsmarted coyotes, Henderson wouldn't have had his 3 daughters. Hastings wouldn't have built that farm. You wouldn't have taught how many students? 4,000. And they had kids, and their kids had kids. He smiled. That's a lot of chickens. Dietrich died in 2003. Heart attack, quick. The obituary didn't mention Prummern or the Panzers or rewriting tactics. It said, good father, good husband, good farmer, all true. But I'm 97, and I've forgotten most of my life, and I still remember how he smiled when I gave the order, like he'd been waiting to prove farm wisdom was combat wisdom. That reading land and reading battle were the same. I still don't know how he knew. I just know I owe him everything. Henderson's daughters, Hastings Farm, 4,000 students, all those chickens, all those lives.